Okay, welcome back. I'm only hearing my voice once. Welcome back to House Human Services, where we are going to pick up further discussion of H91. And Katie, welcome back to our lovely abode.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, we have, for people who are in the audience, we have a new version 4.1, says 227, 314 on it. It says 314.
Did I put the wrong date on it? Oh, I started working on it last Friday. It says 314.
Okay,
I saved it.
all right. Anyways, it's version 4.1. Okay, and so, Katie, everybody has a copy of it. It is on our website, for people who, maybe don't have a written copy. And I think the first thing that we're going to do is just to have you go through, the highlighted, information, say what's changed, and, in the highlights, I think there's how I'd like to handle this, folks, is one, I have been through all of the feedback, from the various sources up through to, come on in, it's standing room, but, you're welcome to come in. And, I have been through the feedback, up to the feedback that we have received today, which is, primarily, from individuals in the, shelter community who have not had an opportunity, they did not have the opportunity to see the revised version, which I think hopefully potentially addresses some of their concerns. And then we did receive, just about an hour or so ago, from the Domestic Violence Network. I will forward that to you now. Some additional feedback. They're appreciative of our language changes, but they have some additional, whoops, not home. That's probably just where I hope I was. They have some additional comments. Whoops, I'm going to forward that to Katie too. So we'll talk about that when we get to that section. So for now, Katie, why don't you take it away, okay?
Okay. Katie McLean, Office of Legislative Counsel. We have draft 4.1 in front of us. You'll notice that there's less highlighting in this version than 3.1. The highlighting is meant to show the difference between the drafts, so we're not showing changes from the beginning of the process. So in the findings section, really the most significant changes I had attributed the point in time count to the alliance, and that was incorrect. So now we're just calling it the Vermont 2024 point in time count. So that change is made throughout the findings section. That brings us to page 3, legislative intent. There's a new subsection A to lead off in the legislative intent section. It is the intent of the General Assembly that unsheltered homelessness be eliminated and that homelessness in Vermont be rare, brief, and non-recurring. And then in subdivision 3, this is where we have a list of the steps we're taking toward, and then this subdivision 3 had said community components, and it had specifically called out emergency temporary shelter and transitional shelter. And now it's saying community components of all shelter types are integrated in a systemic manner.
That's a FYI, a change that I made because that was just kind of limiting it to those things. And there's, potential for much more creativity than we can envision here right now. So I just felt it was too limiting. And the first intent, that was feedback we've gotten from several organizations, including Vermont Interfaith, the ACLU, but there was 2 or 3 others, I can't remember, but they were encouraging us to be upfront about that sort of overall goal.
At top of page 4, subsection C, I've corrected the name in HOP to be the Housing Opportunity Grant Program. Apparently the G in HOP is silent. So I have corrected that throughout the draft. Next, we move down to the bottom of page 4. This is, we're now in the chapter that we're creating that will go into the green books, and you'll see there are some changes here. So any other identified state and federal monies, before we decide any other identified monies, let's see. And then, I shouldn't have put it there.
Yeah, I didn't think, it doesn't go there. Yeah, okay.
Line 21, straight grant.
Yeah.
I think I saw housing and program and
Put it out.
thought I was up. So strike that, I will delete that. That brings us to the top of page 5. This is our definition section. Households, we're amending the definition of household to mean an individual and any dependents for whom the individual is legally responsible who live and intend to stay in Vermont. In subdivision 6, precariously housed, I just have a flag here for whether precariously housed is the right term, because there was at least one question raised as to whether that was the correct wording for that group of persons.
I'm interested in feedback about this. I can't remember. I think it was Lily who said that precariously housed and at risk of homelessness are kind of words or phrases that are used interchangeably. And is there a preference to use one or the other, or how are people feeling about that? Jubilee?
HUD is like, the HUD version of it is at risk of homelessness. So it might make sense and be less, they're used interchangeably, but it just makes sense to me to maybe use the HUD language like we're using in other sections.
Doug, I think you had a comment about this phrase before. Is that?
If I'm recalling correctly, I just wasn't sure if that was a term of art that's known within the field, or
Yeah.
just something we were using it as an expression of being precariously housed. So in any way that it's refined is okay with me.
Does the HUD definition, I don't know if Jubilee or Lily knows, does it say at imminent risk? Like,
That's
should we add that, or is that?
imminent
different?
risk is a different thing. Imminent
Okay.
risk means within 14 days or less, you will lose your housing. So
Okay.
that's
So we-
maybe your landlord is selling your home and now you have, so if you're at imminent risk and you're within that 14-day window, you're considered homeless, and that's really
Okay.
so you can activate those like diversion kind of resources to prevent unsheltered
Thank you.
homelessness.
Okay, so Katie, I'm going to say we should change that to at risk of being homeless.
Okay.
And then we have to figure out how do we define it without just repeating it again?
I do want to note right now, because of how we define homeless, we are excluding folks who are at imminent risk. So we may want to have that, but
As a separate.
as a
definition.
separate from this precariously housed or imminent or risk of homelessness.
I'm sorry, I'm not getting that. Say that again.
Our current definition we have for homeless
Yeah.
means a lacking a fixed, regular and adequate nighttime residence.
Yes.
That's the kind of category 1
Yeah,
homelessness of HUD. So right now, we're not including that imminent risk of homeless as homeless. So that may be something we want to consider adding that 14 days less definition and consideration in these.
So is the imminent risk folks, would they not be counted or captured under the at risk? of,
Yeah, 'cause we're
like,
not
the
putting-
precariously.
yeah, I mean, I guess that's. my
It's going to
question.
depend, if there's, where a program where they, and it, in the housing world, it does matter. Because there are resources, the imminent risk counts just like if you're, literally homeless.
Mhm.
They're treated the same, in all of our kind of other programs, especially our HUD programs. The at risk of homeless are separate. They qualify for some things and maybe not others.
So I think, and we'll have to watch as we go through. I think that everywhere where we're talking about the services and so forth for households that are homeless, we say homeless or precariously housed. So it would include it, except for when we describe the priority population, which,
For hotels, yeah.
right.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it's just something
I
to
think
flag,
that
so
covers
we
it,
want to
but yeah, we-
make sure there's
we want to
no,
make sure. Yeah.
we're not
As we
leaving
go through
people
it.
out accidentally.
Yeah. Okay. So to summarize,
Mhm.
we're leaving homeless the way it is, and we're changing precariously housed to at risk of losing.
Risk of homelessness?
Oh, yeah, at risk of.
Yeah, and then you can losing a primary nighttime residence, I
I was
guess.
trying.
I don't know, can somebody give Katie the citation for, thank you, Lily. The citation for the definition from HUD, so that we don't need to make it up.
Okay. Okay. Continuing on, subdivision 7, unsheltered homelessness means sleeping in a location not designed for or ordinarily used as a regular sleeping accommodation.
I want to make sure that I'm understanding, and is this a HUD definition?
The HUD has a lot of like descriptions and references. It's kind of the, yeah, I had sent you, and I sent to Katie, so
Right.
that's the gist of it. I think this is fine.
Would
There's,
include
I don't think there's
examples,
a,
Right.
you know, official look to, it's more a concept that everyone agrees on.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, our next section is establishing the new program. Top of page 6, we have quite a few changes, so I'll read through this. The Vermont Homeless Emergency Assistance and Responsive Transition to Housing Program is established in the department and shall be operated by community action agencies in collaboration with other community partners who may include municipalities to the extent funds exist. The program shall build on the Chittenden County Continuum of Care, balance of state continuum of care, local housing coalitions, and coordinated entry. It shall use 2-on-1 for initial intake services, which shall operate on a 7-day, 24-hour-a-day basis. It shall include the following components.
So let's stop here just to reflect on this for a moment. So one of the pieces of feedback that we received was, well, it wasn't just one, it came in multiple places, but people wanting to make sure that we were essentially building on what's here and not trying to exclude, things that were actually part of the system now. So the continuum of care, the balance of state, the Chittenden County, those are two, they're HUD designated. There's, millions of dollars that come into those organizations to be leaders in the efforts to address homelessness as funded by HUD. And coordinated entry is part of that system. And as you all know, we use coordinated entry and people who do permanent housing utilize coordinated entry as a source of referral for people to enter permanent housing. So I wanted to make sure that both that, the local housing coalitions, and 211 understood that they would have a continued role in this process, that we're not like subverting them from the operations out there in the community. And but there is a new concept, I guess, if you will, here at the 211, and that is that looking to 211 to do essentially what they do on nights and weekends, but to do it all during the week. So they would be, and whether or not they set up a separate housing, number or whatever, but they would be the ones who'd be answering the first line of communication. And then they would make a warm referral to, however it's set up in an agreed upon way. So What the effort is here is again, to build upon what exists already, and to not like force community action agencies into figuring out, how do I set up a whole call center? How do I deal with all the, initial applications and initial contacts that people have? So 211 already does that. They are open to looking at doing that on a broader basis. And so for instance, we would be looking to transfer some of the administrative money that's in the program to the community, because then the community would be taking on those responsibilities. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Just to make, point thank you. Does 211 have the capacity and infrastructure and the ability to they're literally taking on another 80 to so many hours a week? Because as I understand now, if the process would be, somebody would enter into one of the economic services building up until a certain time, and then at which time, when those people are not available, they contact 211. So my question is, do you think it's important that we get some feedback from 211, whether or not they do have the capacity and infrastructure and the fiscal sustainability to be able to provide the service of extension?
Yes, I've had that conversation with them. I'm happy to reach out to them to have them provide something in writing to the committee. And we'll make note of that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So as we're going through right now, I just want to clarify what pace we're at, I guess. Because I've been scrambling to try to cross over my comments from the interim draft that we didn't go through, because we did the other one and this one. And so are we walking through just to see what's there, or are we starting to delve into concerns, discussions, so forth, about both the input and our input and thoughts? Or
Right now, I'm just going through the document, letting you know the changes that are here and why those changes were made. And then we'll come back and we'll go through each section.
okay,
Start to mark off sections that people can agree to, and then
because we never went through the reason for prior changes. We never went through draft 3.2 in terms of what's new and why are we doing this and so forth.
that's correct.
Which is okay if we're going to go back. I mean,
We're gonna go through this whole
we can
document.
all on our own cross section what was new in 3.2 that maybe we'll want to further discuss when we go through it section by section.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's too much to ask Katie to have different color highlights for 3.2 and 4.1.
Okay. Yeah, I could probably overlay it. It would probably take me some time to put both together now.
Yeah, that.
Do you still have, I still have 3.1.
We still have it on, we
I
still have it online.
can try to go through both changes at the same time as I go through.
Okay, that would be helpful. You
Okay.
understand what she's saying? Yeah, okay.
So I have both documents open, if that is helpful. So on page 6 and 3.1, we're looking at the different services components of the program. Some of the changes that have been made, we ordered the organization of these, so support services happened first. You wanted the name of the shelter program to sort of lead off the beginning of that class, so that has been added in draft 3.1. And cross references have been updated in 3.1 and 4.1. On Friday afternoon, you added a 5th component of the program, and that was having specific services for households experiencing or who have experienced domestic and sexual violence. So that new language in subdivision 5 is supportive services and shelters specific to households who are or who have experienced domestic and sexual violence, provided or caused to be provided by a statewide organization with a population-specific service experience pursuant to 2209 of this section. So that's a section we haven't looked at yet.
Yeah, keep going.
Keep going? Okay. So next we're moving to supportive services, which is 2205 in both drafts. And 3.1, there are some changes to the lead-in language. A community action agency shall offer or cause to be offered the following supportive services, which may vary in terms of manner and extent depending on the level of shelter a household utilizes or whether the household is precariously housed or experiencing unsheltered homelessness. That language is changed a bit in 4.1. So the new lead-in is consistent with coordinated entry procedures. A community action agency shall offer a cause to offer, and then it is the same. And draft 3.1 subdivision 1, there's a new task or supportive service that's listed, intake assessments and diversion services. Other additions include peer supported services in subdivision 6, housing navigation services in subdivision 8. No changes to that list in draft 4.1. However, there's a new subsection B. Participation in services provided under this section shall be voluntary.
Go ahead.
If they're just voluntary, then,
We're not talking
This
about
is where-
content yet. We're just
Yeah.
going, we're just reviewing the changes. Then we'll come back and discuss the
That's what
major
threw me
changes.
off before when we started it.
Well, I was just
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
trying to let people know why it's particularly changed, but then I'm holding off and we'll just do that.
Yeah.
We'll just do that in further discussion. Go ahead, Katie.
Okay, the next section is extreme weather event shelter. Most of the changes were made in not subdivision, in draft 3.1. So there's language that a community action agency shall operate or cause to be operated shelters. New language in 4 in the state that shall be used during extreme events to shelter any homeless individual who presents themselves at the shelter. The community action agencies, that's a change in 4.1. Shall prioritize funding under this section to regions of the state most impacted by homelessness. And then the last sentence of that section has new language. Unlimited congregate accommodations and may be provided through grants to municipalities or other entities. So those are the changes in those 2 drafts. In 2207, we're looking at emergency temporary shelter in both sections. So we're specifying a community action agency. Previous staff had the RROs. That's why we're seeing community action agencies highlighted everywhere.
Oh.
Shall serve or cause to be served. And then there's new language in draft 4.1. In the manner agreed to as part of the federally required community planning process, households that are prioritized instead of eligible pursuant to subsection B. And then in subsection B, I've updated the lead-in language. 3.1 changes RRO to community action agency, and 4.1 changes provide or cause to be provided to prioritize or cause to be prioritized. No other changes in that section, so that brings us to transitional shelter in both drafts, 2208. Again, in draft 3.1, RRO is changed to community action agency, using the language to serve or cause to be served is added in 3.1. Transitional shelter, the word transitional is added before shelter in draft 3.1. And then we have the same language that we just looked at in 4.1, that it shall be in a manner agreed to as part of the federally required community planning process. Other changes in draft 3.1, instead of the RRO, the community action agency may provide or cause to be provided transitional shelter through community-based shelter. That picks up our definition in the definition section. And that is it for changes in draft 3.1 for that section.
How are we doing with me jumping back and forth? Is that?
I got lost. I got lost.
What
Okay.
page are we?
Yeah, I got lost. I was doing good.
Hey, the most recent.
And the most recent, we're on page 10.
Yeah, that's where I am.
Let's say the section number each time we go into it, so
Okay.
like section page, we're moving to section 2209 now.
Okay.
Okay, I'm there.
Section, now we start having different sections first. So in 4.1, section 2209, we have a new section based on your decision on Friday, supportive and shelter services for households impacted by domestic and sexual violence. So this sort of tracks that you have standalone sections for supportive services, emergency temporary shelters. This is an additional section akin to those. A statewide organization with population-specific experience serving households who are or who have experienced domestic and sexual violence shall provide or cause to be provided victim-centered shelter, financial assistance, and appropriate supportive services, including coordinated entry services.
No. I thought we were gonna do that separate.
It is separate. That's what the purpose of this is.
Oh, okay, okay.
Separate section.
It just,
It's still part of the program, but it's a separate section operated separately.
okay.
So next, we have 2210 in draft 4.1, which is 2209 in draft 3.1. This is the duties of the community action agencies. So we're updating the title in section 3, sorry, not in section 3, in draft 3.1. We're switching out RROs with the community action agencies and that lead-in language in A. We're saying, let's see, that are experiencing homelessness or that are precariously housed throughout the state by providing supportive services, extreme weather shelter, emergency temporary shelter, or transitional shelter pursuant to various sections of this chapter. So you're listing all the different components of the program in the order in which they appear is what that changes. Also in this subsection A, if a community action agency cannot fulfill its responsibilities under this chapter, the department shall work with other community action agencies or other appropriate community entities to ensure that there is not a gap in services in a community action agency's region. And then that brings us to subsection B, a community action agency providing or causing to provide services in accordance with this chapter shall, so that's new lead-in language, have existing or planned infrastructure, that's new, in draft 3.1.
No.
In draft 3.1, that was new, yep. For households in the region, that was new in 3.1. Let's see, in subdivision 3, you added to the list of having community connections, you added housing providers. And 4.1, the addition is local housing agencies. In draft 4.1, there's a new subsection 4 that is to provide plain language communications to clients. So that's a requirement of the community action agencies under draft 4.1. I'm moving to page 12 of draft 4.1. Okay, so that means we're in.
Can I back up just a moment, just for clarity? In 2210, where we've added in 4.1 local housing agencies, does that incorporate the local housing coalition?
No, that word's supposed to be coalition.
Oh,
Yeah. So
thank you.
we're gonna get to that.
Local housing coalition.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so now draft 4.1, we're in 2211, which is the duties of the department. The corresponding section in draft 3.1 is 2210 at the top of page 11. So this, in section 3, this is, or draft 3.1, this is pretty much all rewritten. So for the purpose of providing administrative oversight and monitoring of the program established in this chapter, the department shall, I'm just going to pause there because there's a new lead-in sentence in 4.1, which is that the department shall have statewide responsibility for meeting the intent of the chapter. And then we go into a list. In subdivision 1A, adopt guidance regarding when extreme weather event shelters shall be operated. 4.1 adds including flexibility for regional weather conditions. Subdivision B, maintain a website with the locations of all extreme weather event shelters.
Now, who will do, we'll wait till we get that. Who does that?
These are all responsibilities of the duty of the
Oh,
department. This is the
okay.
list of all their responsibilities.
Got it.
This is a subdivision 2. There's the inclusion of the word include at the beginning of 2. Include as part of any redesignation. That should have been review.
Yep.
Review.
Of any reason.
I have it. I have it twice. Okay. As part of any review of a community action agency required pursuant to 3 VSA Chapter 59, the community action agency's ability to perform versus comply the requirements of this chapter. Subdivision 3A, consult with the community action agencies to develop appropriate resource allocations that take into account available data. And then new language in 4, and customary resource allocation methods.
What's that mean?
We'll talk about it when we get to talking about why language is added.
Economic indicators, rate of homelessness, rental vacancy rates, and other variables as appropriate. And subdivision 3B, annually distribute funding to each of the community action agencies, to each community action agency using allocation formula developed pursuant to subdivision A of this subdivision 3. Or if the department and community agencies agree, disperse a joint allocation for all community action agencies, which the community action agencies, new language in 4, in conjunction with their local housing coalition shall decide how to distribute amongst themselves. Subdivision 4, new language in draft 3, consult with the community action agencies to develop appropriate measures and methods for accountability of community action agencies, execution of duties under this chapter, including the provisions of any previously agreed upon information to enable the department to evaluate services provided through grant funds, the effect on households receiving services and accounting of expended grant funds. In draft 4, there are 3 new duties. In subdivision 5, provide support and technical assistance to community action agencies and convene community stakeholders. 6, identify specific administrative resources that could be transitioned to community operations. And 7, adopt rules pursuant to 3 VSA Chapter 25 in consultation with the community action agencies for the implementation of this chapter, including accommodations for individuals with a disability. Okay, I'm now moving to 2212 and draft 4, which is equivalent to 2211 and draft 3. There is new lead-in language in 3 as part of the plan required pursuant to 3 VSA Chapter 59. If you remember, the community service action agencies, which in statute are service agencies, they have statutory language in this chapter 59. So we're cross-referencing that. And then there's new language in 4. So as part of that plan and the federally required planning and needs assessment for the continuums of care, the community action agencies shall jointly develop a regional needs assessment for use in each community action agency's region to inform future plans addressing housing and homelessness in each region of the state. So region of the state is new. The reason you're seeing highlighting in draft 3 for region is because the original draft had a mix between service area and region. So I determined and went with it. So I won't pause there. The next change in draft 3 is subdivision 6. Utilize data, including the point in time count. And then in subdivision in draft 4, there's an update to strike produced by a statewide homeless advocacy organization. what else did I forget? And draft 4, subdivision 4, report instead of determine the rate of household participation instead of compliance with the coordinated entry processes. Okay. In subdivision B, in draft 3.1, there was new language. Each community action agency shall submit plans developed pursuant to this section. New language is to the department in a format prescribed by the department. The department shall aggregate the results of these reports and submit the aggregated report to Human Services and Senate Health and Welfare. No changes to that in draft 4. Now I'm moving to 2213 of draft 4, which is 2212 of draft 3. So this is on the use of hotels and motels. The big change is in draft 4, there's language that the hotels and motels shall comply with program rules and the following. So we're acknowledging the fact that there'll be rules adopted for this particular program and that the hotels and motels will have to comply with them. In draft 3, we're just updating RROs. There's the addition of the word negotiate in draft 3. And then on page 15 of draft 4, subsection B, a community action agency may enter into grants for the use of blocks of hotel rooms instead of contracts. Okay,
Yeah, that's okay.
is that,
Grants are from the state to the community action
Okay.
agencies.
3
Right there, I probably would just say agreements.
agreements?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that brings us to the end of what would be the new chapter. Next, section 4 is the creation of the advisory committee. I'm gonna look through and see where the changes are. There are a lot of, so additions in section and draft 3 include adding a Secretary of Human Services, in subsection B to the membership. Many more changes in draft 4 to the membership. 5 representatives with lived experience of homelessness appointed by the lead coordinated entry agency. 1 representative appointed by each of the community action agencies. A representative appointed by the Chittenden County Coordinated Entry Organization. A representative appointed by the Balance of State Coordinated Entry Organization. 5 representatives of local housing coalitions, including at least two of whom are shelter providers, that's right, appointed jointly by Chittenden County Coordinated Entry Organization and the Balance of State Coordinated Entry Organization. And that is it for changes to membership. In draft 3, there was new language, a new subsection added really about what the advisory committee would be providing recommendations on. So recommendations on how to triage eligible priority populations, that is an addition in 4. When there are insufficient, that's a change in 4, available shelter beds in a region. Other new language in 3, recommendations would be required on the appropriate level of required intake and assessment processes for each of the various levels of shelter that a household may utilize for households that are precariously housed and for households experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And then we have a date that these recommendations are coming in on or before February 1. Oops, we should add a year. 2026, I'm assuming. The advisory committee shall submit its recommendations to the department, and then to the 2 policy committees. And then I'm in draft 4, page 18. This is language setting up the committee. And it says, an earlier draft says that there'll be a chair and a co-chair. This says that the committee shall select co-chairs from among its members at the first meeting, at least one of whom is not a state employee. And then there's a new subdivision 4, that the advisory committee may divide into subcommittees to carry out its duties under this section. And subcommittees may include individuals not appointed to the advisory committee pursuant to the list that we just looked at. So those are the major changes in both drafts on that. I'm on page 18 of draft 4. I'm on page 17 of draft 3, and we're looking at the implementation plan. Because the language is almost entirely new in section 3, it is entirely new. It's all highlighted. I'm just gonna look at section 4.
Version.
Version 4, thank you. So in the implementation plan, we've removed the date on or before. That's an open question. DCF in collaboration with community action agencies shall submit a plan for the implementation of the program that ensures maximum flexibility for the use of resources and streamlines processes for program participants. Specifically, the implementation plan shall address. Then we have a list. We have some new items, and some amended items since draft 3. Funding allocations among the community action agencies and other providers, including for services specific to households who are experiencing or have experienced domestic or sexual violence. Additional funding resources identified for the program, appropriate methods and methods for accountability developed by the department and community action agencies, pursuant to language that we previously looked at for directing the two to work together to come up with what accountability measures there might be. I should make sure that that is still at 4 though. Appropriate supportive services specific to the level of to the level of shelter a household utilizes, or whether the household is precariously housed or experiencing unsheltered homelessness. Subdivision 5, establishing an appeals process that includes a hearing before the Human Services Board and an option for an expedited appeals process. Whether lease agreements should allow payments to be withheld by the community action agencies or any other entity holding the grant, and any anticipated challenges requiring a legislative solution. Also, new in 3 is the language as part of the plan required pursuant to this section. The department shall develop and submit standards for the operation of community-based shelters based on Vermont Housing Opportunity Grant Program standard of provision of assistance. This language is entirely new in section 3, so I'm just going to work off of section 4. So this is pulling in the chapter in Title 3 that was specific to the community, what the Green Books are calling service agencies. So you've decided to change it throughout to community action agencies, and then there has been some change to be just more consistent to the way we refer to individuals now. So recognizing that the economic well-being and social equity of every Vermonter has long been a fundamental concern of the state, it remains evident that a substantial number of Vermont's population continues to experience poverty. It is the policy of the state to develop the full potential of each of its citizens, etc. And subsection B, the lead in language is, it is the purpose of this chapter to strengthen, supplement, and coordinate efforts to further this policy through, and subdivision 2, the better organization and utilization of a range of services related to the needs of individuals with low income. Subdivision 3, the broadening of the resource base of programs to secure a more active role in assisting individuals with low income from business, labor, and other groups, etc. Top of page 21, changing community service agency to community action agency. In subsection B, the director may provide financial assistance to community action agencies. Same change on line 8. And then on lines 11 to 13, components of those services and activities may involve without limitation of other activities and supporting facilities designed to assist participants with low income. And then in subdivision 4, striking out provide and maintain adequate housing and a suitable living environment with have access to safe, secure, permanent housing. That's new in draft 4. In both draft 3 and 4, obtain prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery services for individuals with substance use disorder. I did some technical changes. Subdivision 10, line 10, updating assure to ensure. Services of persons with low income to be consistent. Brings us to 3903. Some technical changes. Line 21 is updating community service to community action. Top of page 23, same change in the title and on line 2. And technical changes, and then lines 8 through 10. The community services plan shall be completed every 3 years and updated annually. The plan shall include the regional needs assessment required in 2209. So cross-referencing back to the changes from service to action agency on line 11, line 13, and line 17. Same change on line 2, refer to ensure. On line 3, changing the use of the board, individuals with low income. And subsection C, using gender neutral language on line 8. On lines 9 through 12, this is language about the makeup of the board, and instead it's being replaced with the board shall adopt term limits to govern its members instead of being prescriptive. Then we have language about the transitional appropriation for fiscal year 26. The previous draft had 10 million on line 15, now it's 6.5. And then on line 17, it had been 6 million, now it's 3.
It's supposed to be a total of 10, Katie.
It's still supposed to be 10?
No,
I'm sorry. Okay, so where else is I?
the 6.5 is supposed to be number 1.
Okay. And then was there 3 somewhere? 7,
3.5 in number 3.
3.5. Okay, sorry about that.
It's 3, it's 3. Let me just add them up.
Yes. No, it's 2.5. It has to be 2.5.
Yeah, no, you've got 11 now.
Just a second, not yet. It's whatever is, I'm having a hard, that's 7, so it's 3. But in number 3, it should be 3, not 4.5.
Thank you.
Total of 10.
It's a total of 10, yes. Still a total of 10, just reallocated.
And then
Wait till we get to the.
we're at the end. 25, line 9, adding grant.
Okay.
That's right.
Sorry.
I don't have to get it.
Because we have so many people in the room, if you can identify who you are when you're speaking, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Lily Soderner for the Department for Children and Families Office of Economic Opportunity. Just a question regarding the increase. Would that also include the domestic violence provider in that line for transition funds in addition to the 5? How many 5 would you actually use? I don't know if that was one reason for the increase.
No, I haven't thought about that, to be
Okay.
honest. I'll put a question mark.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Katie. Okay, so we have now gone through version 3.2 and, or 3, is it 3.2?
3.1
No, 3.1.
and 4.1.
Right.
Yes, I just didn't know if it's 3.1 or 3. So we've gone through 3.1 and 4.1 now. Okay, now we're going back to the beginning. All right. Because this is D time, whatever you want to call it, decision times. So,
Official markup.
this is official. So, I want to let people know. So Todd, can you just say just for a second? So I'm not.
For a second,
Oh, okay, just for a second. When we go through a section, And we marked off that section with any potential changes that we have today. Other than reviewing the changes that we make today, we're not going to be coming back to that session for further discussion. Okay, I just want to be clear with everybody around the table. This is, we're in the final stages. Okay? Thank you, Todd.
Right back.
And then stuff that we would like to see in there.
And then you can bring that up along the way.
And then what we
Yeah,
like to
you
see.
can bring that up along the way. Absolutely. Okay? All right. So, does anybody have any questions about lines 1 through 6? Great. Okay, in findings, as Katie said, HHAB was, they report the findings, but it's not their survey. So this was just changed to say, to indicate the Vermont point in time survey.
I have a note at the top.
Okay, top of page
I saw you
two.
flip your page.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I saw Teresa
Okay,
jumping.
I was just looking to see what else is going on.
Same note.
Yeah, okay. So under findings on page 1, so findings 1, 2, and 3, are there any questions, comments, or suggestions? And this is only from members around the table. Okay, done. 2, 3. All right. Okay,
This one, Ann and I both, it says 166 experienced unhoused homelessness. That should be unsheltered.
Line 3.
Yeah, or line 2
Line 2.
of 4.1.
166 experienced unsheltered homelessness.
and is that the same thing for highest count of unsheltered homeless?
Oh, yeah, and down there, yeah.
Okay.
Unhoused is just like interchangeable with homeless.
Yep.
Unsheltered is the specific of not being in a shelter, not being in that place lit, fit for.
Okay, so to summarize, number 4 would now read, of the 3,458 unhoused individuals in Vermont identified by the Vermont 2024 point in time count, 166 experienced unsheltered homelessness, which is the highest count of unsheltered homeless individuals in Vermont within the past decade. Any questions about that?
Sorry, but what about the first use of the word unhoused at the front of that?
Oh,
That's the correct.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
that's all.
Unsheltered is a subsection of the unhoused.
Yeah, I might understand this.
Okay, now in numbers 5, 6, and we'll do 5, 6, and 7 because those all had changes in them. Again, just changing it to Vermont instead of the HHAB Vermont.
And maybe consistency here with the unsheltered where appropriate, like homelessness, if those experiencing homelessness were unsheltered for more than 1 year.
Oh, I think they're all, I think that is all correct, to be honest.
That is all correct.
Yeah.
That's,
That
it's,
should
yeah,
be unhoused.
Yes.
yeah, that, those
That's
are,
the broader.
yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. 5, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. 8. 8 and 9 are referring to the Vermont Housing Needs Assessment. Any questions about that? Comments, suggestions? Okay, 8 and 9. Now we're moving on to legislative intent. Okay, the first paragraph is added based on feedback we received from the community. It's kind of a combination of feedback from I think 3 different organizations. And it's a combination of language from a couple of the organizations. So and it is intended to set out, like right at the beginning, what the sort of overall goal, overarching goal of the state of Vermont is. Do people have any questions, comments, concerns about number A, letter A, section 2? Just so everybody knows where we're at, top of page 3.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Do I believe it's realistic? No.
That's why we have B.
I,
I put a question mark too.
Yeah, well, B is a
I mean,
step towards
even if you're-
ensuring early phases. So A is like, yeah, that's the long term. That's what we would like to see, but
So you would almost want to put long-term goal because we would like to see it, but it's a long-term goal.
yeah, I
I
think
know.
Katie would know better. I think legislative intent has to use the words
Oh.
is the intent.
Yeah.
Yeah, assembly that.
Same thing, is it, as a goal, intent?
Yeah,
I think that, while we might have differences of thoughts about whether or not we can achieve this or not, I'm going to remain hopeful that someday we will. So, okay,
it also
Okay.
doesn't say this bill is gonna do that.
do it, right.
That's what B is.
Right.
So,
Okay, all right, A, check. B. So then it's the intent of the General Assembly that this program is a step, I want to make sure I point that out to people, is a step toward ensuring that. So read carefully, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're just going to try to go by page here.
yep. Get to it. I have something on 5.
something on 4.
Okay. Anybody have anything on 1?
I do, just, I don't have a better word. I'm just wondering about ensuring that homelessness be addressed.
Yeah,
in
that-
Vermont, it feels like there's too much wiggle room there.
Well, it was more wiggly before we put addressed. I can't remember what the addressed was.
Yeah.
What was, we talked about this in here.
Homelessness be tackled.
Be what?
Be tackled. Be tackled, the issue.
Yeah.
Um,
Address might be the strongest word we can, I have some a better one. Okay,
We're at the phase of if you have a question and you need to, if you're interested in a change, you got to propose something.
yes, I hear that. So, I like address.
Okay.
You could do mitigated, if you'd like, that's stronger. Maybe too strong. Homelessness.
You mitigate the effects of homelessness.
if
You don't
do
mitigate
that,
homelessness.
That responses to homelessness be developed in Vermont, you could say. Manage. Be
Reduced?
Be reduced.
homelessness be reduced.
Oh,
That's certainly, that's a step towards reducing homeless, we hope. If it's
Yeah.
not, we're really-
reduced in.
I think reduced is good.
Yeah.
People like reduced?
Yeah, I like reduced.
Okay,
Much better than
reduced.
address. Yeah.
Okay, number 1, check.
Okay.
Number 2. Increasing the supply of temporary and transitional shelter as well as permanent supportive housing meets the needs of people.
I guess the question how VHAR increases the supply of permanent supportive housing. Or is that, I guess I'm wondering how we're accomplishing that, or is that?
Connections with other providers, referrals to other providers, the ability to keep somebody through our preventative efforts. Remember that we're trying to increase
Yeah.
preventative efforts, and then providing them with the assistance to access the supports that they need to stay there.
It's all the case management
Yeah.
pieces, really.
Any other questions on number 2? Check. Number 3, community components of all shelter types are integrated in a systemic manner.
Explain it.
Okay, so it used to list the different shelter types, so emergency temporary shelter, blah, 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 blah. And as I was rereading that, it didn't take into consideration the fact that we are encouraging and promoting a lot more flexibility in the community with this program. So there could be things that we have not yet thought about. And we don't know the names for them. And so just limiting it to these, couple of specifics that are in the bill didn't seem to make sense. We're
Makes sense.
wanting to have an integrated system that looks to the future as well as what we have. Any questions, concerns, or thoughts about that further? Okay, check. Time limits, night by night shelter, relocation between interim shelter sites and other disruptions and stability be eliminated to the extent possible.
I wondered if we could just delete the word arbitrary. I mean, because it's judgmental and that means that somebody might propose something that's non-arbitrary. And what does that mean?
Well, it also suggests that other types of time limits don't need to be eliminated at all.
So who
As opposed
decides?
to eliminating them to the extent possible.
So I'm just wondering who decides if it's arbitrary or not.
Right, yeah, no, I agree.
I think so.
But I think we'll have some rules in place. I'm looking at it.
One conversation.
Emergency, cold weather
Uh-huh.
shelters, if you will.
So there will be time limits opposed.
There will be time limits and they won't be arbitrary because they'll be setting rules
I
at
see.
X temperature or X, weather event.
And that would be.
The last extent possible cover that.
Yeah, because obviously there's a time limit if the shelter closes because extreme weather is over. So that is covered by to the extent possible.
I think that the elimination of the word arbitrary is probably appropriate, given the fact that it is open to interpretation by,
Feels a bit
you might,
charged.
right, you might have a
Yes.
different interpretation than somebody else. And so are people okay with eliminating, it doesn't eliminate the intent, but just the, I guess, value statement about arbitrary? People okay with that? Okay. So eliminate arbitrary, Katie?
And then I had a question, because with the caps, I was gonna bring that up during hotel motel.
Okay.
Would this affect this piece before we get that far?
Um,
Because I don't want to get there and then have you say, sorry, Brenda, it's too late. That's what I'm worried about. Sorry, Brenda, you already agreed to 17. I'm sorry, you're too late for your caps.
It says to the extent possible, so we can take that up when we get to hotels.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, or concerns about that? All right, check. Anne?
Yeah, so I really support that we want to incorporate housing first principles. But we don't actually anywhere, I don't believe anywhere in the bill actually explain what that means or actually state it as part of the as the program, particularly because, I mean, we're talking principles, you know, what they are, but Housing First is a program that is specific to achieving permanent housing. So how they apply to emergency housing, I think we had some comments on that, is really unclear because they may not all be able to be applicable. And so given the fact that we never explain how that's supposed to be a part of it, I mean, I'd like to keep
What's
it
your
as
suggestion?
intent. Well, I'd leave it as intent. I would say that when we go further into the bill, that we have to then actually maybe under the implementation or something to specify how Housing First principles are made a part of the plan.
Okay.
So leave this here, but then we've got to make it a part of the bill.
One suggestion, Ann, might be to change the word incorporate to be model.
Be modeled on Housing First principles. I mean, I think that would be helpful. And then probably also add a line somewhere in the
I like that.
developing the implementation plan. I think that's a great word. Yeah.
So we're taking out incorporate and we're writing be modeled on Housing First principles.
Yeah.
It's more active even as well. Okay, with that, number 5, check?
I just have a question. I don't know.
No? Okay,
Sorry.
take the check back.
About the capitals and Housing First.
Oh, yeah.
It makes it seem like it's a specific thing.
Housing.
It is
It's
specific.
everywhere.
Okay.
When you Google it, it's capitalized everywhere.
Yeah, it's a specific
I mean, I know it's
type of
specific,
concept.
but yeah, I wasn't sure if that was like specific towards like programs within our state when we capitalize things rather than concepts. So I just wanted to make sure that was, just kind of sure, sounds like it is.
Okay, we're at the top of page 4.
We'll move on.
6, non-congregate shelter be used to the extent possible.
I might just suggest a non-congregate shelter be prioritized to the extent possible. Rather than just use, I mean, maybe that's too detailed. For the use of non-congregate shelter be,
I like that, but I don't think it's a big.
okay, then leave it. All right, that's not good.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, check. C. Okay, so this is intent language that this program, VHART, replace the provision of emergency housing through the GA program and the Housing Opportunity Grant Program. That's what we've all been working on.
And I have a question because I've been working with Chris Winters and Miranda over the weekend. Where would, it works with the GA program, the rules and regulations about, if people have misconduct, they lose 30 days of housing and all that. Where would that fit into this?
Well, under the department responsibilities.
Yeah, that-
Is that coming?
It's coming down the line.
I've got all the wording here.
Yeah, I know that. Okay.
Okay.
So, everybody, okay, let's see. All right, check. Okay, we are down to, the VHART and short title. I think everybody can agree to that since that's what we're.
And just to interject for new folks, everything we've done so far does not end up in the statutes. It's just part of the bill, our intentional. This is the beginning of this would actually become part of our statutes.
Adding a new chapter. Okay. The purpose, it's a purpose, to replace the provision. So here, this is why it's repeated again, okay? And I think you should add grant there, I guess, to make it consistent, Katie, on line 18. I added on line 19 and 20, any other identified state and federal monies. So this will happen through the discussion in the implementation plan. There may be other monies that, I would expect a discussion about whether or not all of general assistance should move into this pot of money and the whole thing be done at the community level, or whether there can be master grant that goes out to community action agencies that incorporates, other funds that they receive. So I just felt just to be safe and put out there that, if there are other things that we aren't including here specifically, you're not prohibited from including them.
I think in line 21, that's not a spot where we intended to add.
No, we deleted it.
No, we did, yeah.
Oh, you already deleted it. Okay.
Yeah. You're correct. Okay, so we are
Here's an
done.
updated version we haven't even seen yet.
No, we just did it as we were going through it.
Oh,
When
okay, I
Katie
thought
was
we
going
added.
through it.
Right.
She told, yeah, we
Oh,
added
oh,
it there,
and
but
we
then we
added
said,
it.
oh, we didn't
Sorry.
mean to do it there.
I had it on the wrong line.
Yeah.
Yep.
I-
Sorry,
Okay,
I'm caught up.
May I ask a drafting question? If we are eliminating the general assistance program and the housing opportunity program and replacing them, will ultimately we incorporate into this bill those sections of the statute all struck, or is it just the instruction here that strikes it as sufficient?
The GA program really doesn't address emergency housing almost at all. I think there's maybe one report that mentions housing, but other than that, it's silent on housing. So that's why I haven't touched the GA.
We learned that last year when we put in a bill to create a program, a different, a different version of this. And we said, oh, can you find us what it says about the program currently?
Yeah,
Nothing,
right.
pretty much. So it was a good question, but we don't have to worry about it because it's not really mentioned. Okay, under definitions, here's where we start, with some of the meat of stuff. The community-based shelter. We are still expecting the department to issue standards for the operation of shelters. Okay, they're just not gonna be called HOP. All right, department means DCF. Extreme weather event. I know we had some discussion about that. Homeless.
Sorry, back on extreme weather event, please help me remember, do we later include that as part of what will be hashed out in the next year? Definitions, further definition. Thank you.
Not definition, but under what circumstances? Yeah. Homeless means lack of fixed, regular, adequate nighttime residence. And these are done alphabetically, yeah. Okay.
Oh, I see. Okay. About that.
Well, it's very interesting because sometimes in a bill, they're done alphabetically and sometimes they're put in a section where they're only referenced in that section. And so
They appear in the bill.
in the order they appear in the bill, right?
Yeah,
So,
okay, well,
yeah,
just
go
to
ahead.
know that it's alphabetical, because it doesn't seem so sensical, so I was trying to figure out if there is a sense.
Yeah.
And there is, good.
Can I go back up to C?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so maybe.
C, wait a minute, let's
Where's
see.
C? What do you?
No, the letter C, because you said they're alphabetical. I was waiting till we got to the. Community action. At some level, we talk about it in here, or its successor,
Oh,
Community action.
community action
agencies.
agencies.
or its, put a definition and then include or its successor. So something happened, one of them goes away, it's not there anymore.
They're defined in statute.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Title three,
Chapter
Katie had showed it to us.
59.
That's
Sorry, I
that one
missed
that
that.
we
But-
did some
Making sure.
amending.
No, but
Yeah.
I'm just, it's a good question about whether we
Yeah.
should include a definition for community action agency
But the-
that references back to Title III.
They're not defined in Title III. They're just, there's a program that's set up around them, but there's never a definition of what a community action agency is.
It doesn't say an agency designated by anybody.
It does. It almost makes me wonder if if the definition is an agency designated pursuant to this chapter, to chapter 59.
Yeah, I think that's fine, but I think we should have a definition.
Yeah.
I refer to the statute that kind of establishes.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
And I can send, Katie some information. I mean, and this comes up later too, like it is tied to federal requirements regarding the community service block grant. And in order to de-designate, they would have to not do something with those required steps. So again, just want people to understand, like I couldn't de-designate them as a community action agency if they just failed to do something identified in Act 91.
No, that would make them de-designated in
We-
terms of
yeah.
their
We
sub.
don't talk about
designated.
designation in here.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, because it.
Put the
and I saw
fence, get rid of
something
them.
No, it said
and-
review.
Review, okay.
Review, we changed, it said redesignation.
You got rid of
Just
that.
said
So
we
again,
got-
just as long as people are clear that the only way to have them not be action, agency, they would have to not do something required.
Yeah.
By us.
Right. Or could the federal, I mean, they were created by the federal government, could they take them away? Could they end them?
Strange times, so. Yes.
Yes.
But
Well,
they
that
could,
would
they
impact
legally
a lot.
cut funding, they could repeal.
Yeah,
or-
so then
But-
it should maybe say, or their, and their successor, or their successor.
But then we'd have
'Cause
to
we're-
create the successor.
They would still
It's
exist in
statute.
Vermont statute.
Would it,
Yeah,
would they? Okay.
yeah, they
fair
would
enough.
still, right.
Okay, so to summarize, we're adding a definition for community action agency that references back to Title III.
Yeah, where are we?
Okay? We're still on page 5, under the Cs.
Here.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I was waiting till the.
I have something for you.
You guys, some of you have a D? Okay, go for a D.
So later, we talk about diversion when we're talking about the supportive services. And I wonder if we should define which diversion we're talking about, because there's like substance use disorder diversion, there's court diversion. So
Where does diversion appear?
under supportive services.
Oh, yeah, it's in the list.
2205A1.
Yeah.
And take assessment and diversion services. So maybe define diversion services in the definition, so we know that it's related to housing, like diversion from
Being homeless.
being homeless.
Right.
Do we need a whole definition from that, or can we just say diversion from homelessness?
Yeah, we can
I
say
don't
that.
know.
Oh, that makes sense.
That makes sense. Use the term once.
That's the only place it's used, yeah.
So sorry, it's too early. We're not there
That's
yet.
okay.
No, that's, I had the thought too, because it is a term that is used
Use
in
a lot of
multiple.
other.
Yes.
Okay, homeless, household. Okay, so there was a change here in household. This is, okay, household means an individual and any dependents for whom the individual is legally responsible and to live and intend to stay in Vermont. So, this goes back to the, essentially the US Supreme Court's definition of resident is anybody who is here and intends to stay. That's the short version of the US Supreme Court decision on that about at least 3 decades ago now. So we added an intent to stay. People understanding what that's doing?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then we added, we've changed precariously housed to at risk, and Lily is going to get the HUD definition for, what's your name down there? Hey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
I have what you sent, but it brings me down a rabbit hole.
I'll send you another.
Should I be looking at 57.6.2? Oh, it says it's defined in 576.2 of the ESG program. Is that where I should be looking?
I'll send you a more
Sorry.
direct link.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Okay, and then we have unsheltered homelessness, meaning sleeping in a location not designed for or ordinarily used. I had all that same issues when I was trying to.
Oh, it's like, yeah, working with HUD program. That's why we have a 3-person staff to
Yeah.
manage our, yeah.
Used as a regular sleeping accommodation. Again, this is derived from HUD language, not exactly what is called the HUD definition, but derived from HUD language. Okay, we have made it through the definitions. Is there any other changes, suggestions, or inclusion of other definitions that you think may or may not be necessary? Okay. Doesn't mean that as we go through the bill, if you find something that people don't seem to understand, that we can't come back and add something here. But as we stand right now, all these definitions are agreeing to. Yes? Yes. Okay. All right. So we're done page 5. Okay, the program is established in the department. This is operated by the community action agencies. Again, we receive feedback, and so that says it all throughout here. So we got rid of the RRO language, okay? I think the key pieces here that I was trying to incorporate and maybe haven't done it as eloquently as I could have, and so open to suggestions, but based on the feedback, people wanting to understand that this is a collaborative effort and that they still want to include municipalities as potential applicants for funding. that there are other community partners out there and that we are building on existing systems out there. So the Chittenden County Continuum of Care, the Balance of State, COC, the local housing coalitions, and coordinated entry process.
I would suggest some language change there, 'cause, at the moment where how it reads, the program shall build on, doesn't reference systems or the work of, or something like that. Might it read most directly, the program shall include and build upon the work of the Chittenden County Continuum of Care, Balance of State?
Yeah, I'm not sure they would consider themselves included. Their work is included, but I think they are standalone entities.
But it's talking about the
Maybe build on the work
build upon the work
of, yeah.
I just have a question about the use 2-on-1 for.
Let's just
Oh, sorry.
move there.
Yeah, I've got something before that. so
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah. So are people okay with or do you have other thoughts? The program should build on the work of the Chittenden County Continuum of Care, Balance of State, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we want to also somehow get in the concept that it's it is not supposed to duplicate processes and system pieces that, I mean, that's been
Yeah.
a persistent
Yes.
concern, you know?
Yeah,
That it doesn't become an overlay on the existing so that we're duplicated. I wonder if there's a way to add that.
Build on and incorporate?
how about shall utilize and that's something that I was thinking about when you just said not.
I said-
Shall utilize and not duplicate or something
Right.
like
Now,
that.
I was gonna suggest in the second line, shall be operated in a single system by community action agencies.
You're looking at the first,
At the second line, the first, where it says operated,
Mine too.
shall be operated.
oh, yeah, that's the previous, I've got, yeah, there's more. We're looking at the next sentence there,
Yeah.
because I think there's more to discuss on that first one.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah,
All right,
I
so
like
let's break this down.
yeah,
First sentence.
okay.
People okay with the first sentence?
No,
Okay, well, there you go.
So let's,
we
yeah,
were
let's
discussing the
address that
second
part.
one, so I jumped into that. No, I'm concerned about in collaboration. Well, I guess I'll put it this way. In terms of the sort of clear overall intent of this, I think in collaboration is the right way to put it. I just think we should be clear that this is not consistent with a lot of input we've been getting from community partners and their concerns, because that doesn't make it structural as I see it. It doesn't make them structurally a part of the program, because it's operated, really, the whole system's operated by the community action agencies.
That's in part what motivated
Oh.
for me the use of the word include in the next sentence.
Yes, and I think it helps to do that, but I just, but starting off from that first point, I don't think I guess I'm not suggesting a change. I just want to be clear that even if we work on the second sentence, we can help, but for those people who feel that we're, turning the whole works over, and that we should make more of a structural component with the others. This is not responding to that. And I think our intent is to say that they are running it and it's collaboration, it's not structural. But
Well, let's see.
Just touching base with what everybody
Yeah.
thinks.
Yeah.
It's-
I mean, I think that I guess what I was getting out of the feedback was that people were afraid that we were just going to have, the community action agency sitting in their offices saying, okay, here you get this, here you get that. No, you don't get this. And yes, you get that. And that's not the process that I don't believe that's a process that they would envision either. But, and so, if there's a different, way to talk about collaboration in a, I guess, more formal way, but I think that maybe if we can wordsmith the second sentence and talk about that, it's not an overlay, so build on
Right.
does give that in
It
sense,
helps.
so,
But what you just said statutorily, this statutory language, even though you gotta collaborate doesn't really mandate. Collaborate means talk together. We are saying they could sit down on their own board, whatever, and say, this is how we're doing it. We've talked, we've collaborated, but we disagree, and this is what we're gonna do, because they shall operate it. And if what we're trying to do is say there's got to be, there's got to be somebody in charge, and it's going to be the community action agencies, that is what this says. I'm not sure we could say something stronger than collaborate, but I think that's the huge shift that is a concern for a lot of
Yeah.
And that's what
existing agencies.
that memo you all received from HHAB, that I know also the CCHA, around the kind of the current process on that collective decision-making, how that happens in our COCs around ranking.
Right.
Is
Collaboration is not, what
Yeah.
word you just used.
collective decision,
Collective decision-making. And collective decision-making, maybe not be viable as a statutory, this is how you do it, but,
But I mean, it's not just, people, it's a ranking, there's people who are appointed, and there's a point system and a system of deciding, and folks do that. So it's not just
It
this.
says, right.
Yeah.
but I have to point out, then it's still up to the department to right now,
Mhm.
to decide who gets funding and what funding. Do you know what I'm saying? So they can have all of that, but that's not necessarily the final
Not-
decision.
Not the funding, but it's the operation.
Um,
Sorry.
it depends on the funds you're talking about, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We'll get into that more in some of the
Yes.
sections.
But it's just a model.
yeah, and and I think that I guess it's important to note that, money goes directly to the COCs, and that process is used to decide how that money is going to be distributed.
Which the community action agencies are part of as well.
Right.
Yeah.
That's federal HUD money that goes directly to COCs. Doesn't go through the department, right? Is that right? Is that right or not?
That's correct, although the state is an applicant to that funding, and so we have been awarded a subset of it, and so for that subset, we do get some funding that goes to
Via.
some providers.
Yeah,
But we have to apply just like everybody else.
yeah, okay.
I don't know if it would help or make a real
And-
difference, but if it said, shall be operated by community action agencies, which shall, and now I've got my grammar, but, and shall collaborate with others, shall collaborate rather than just in collaboration, might strengthen the intent of the.
And I'm wondering if we mush it into like one big sentence. Well, just listing, it's kind of, like we have that and we list municipalities, and then later, I don't know if we just say shall in collaboration with other community programs who may include, we should use stronger language than may, for municipalities, but really, I don't know. It just feels like we're talking about two separate things when we separate it out into the two sentences. So just making it clear that those people are the community partners.
Something for you to hate.
Oh, no.
Are you trying to say that it should be jointly operated by all community partners with the community service agencies taking a leading role?
Well, I don't, I'm just me. That was.
I'm not really saying that,
I
no.
don't think we're saying.
I have a suggestion. Could we try perhaps just saying that the department, and shall be operated by the community action agencies, period? And then start with the next, sentence that has all these things put together in a list. Because it seems to me that we could then say that the community action agency shall collaborate with other community partners, which may include municipalities, and shall build on the work of, and shall include 211, a series of shalls. I don't know, just thought, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just, so the planning aspects of this and the need to bring all the partners together to decide what are the priorities for our region. When you're deciding about the priorities for the region, you're deciding how you're deciding where we're going to put our money,
Exactly.
right? And it seems like that's the place to require to maybe use stronger language in that area. So for right now, it says shall be operated community action agencies. We don't say who, but that shall collaborate with other community partners. Period. To the extent that funds shall. Okay, so maybe we just say, I think this was part of your recommendations on. So maybe the first sentence is just, VHART is established in the department and shall be operated by the community action agencies, period. Community action agencies shall collaborate with other community partners, except for that, to the extent funds exist, goes up there in the first sentence. Okay. And then we say community action agencies shall collaborate with other community partners such as municipalities, Chittenden County Continuum of Care, balance of blah, 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 all of those. Okay.
Can we, instead of such as, say including?
I don't, Katie will do whatever she does. Yeah. I think she says including. Yeah. She doesn't like such as either. And then, so there's the collaboration piece, and then there's the work of these community partners. That's a separate thought, I think. So, when we're talking about, and I think, Anna's right that term build on makes it sound like it's a overlay kind of thing. And, she had a word, I can't forget what it was.
Utilize and not duplicate.
That's very good.
Yes, utilize and not duplicate. Yeah.
I really like ending the sentence with Zon's suggestion, because that really says the community action agencies will operate this, but then adding to that, we want them to do this partnership and the work. So I really like us separating that as Zon suggested and you agreed to.
What was the 2 words or 3 words that we just said, Katie?
And utilize but not duplicate.
Duplicate, yeah.
But I'm missing the piece about pulling the 2 pieces apart.
Okay.
Well, no, just that, I think you already captured that the sentence ends with community action agents operated by community action agencies to the extent the funds exist, period.
Yeah.
And then community action agencies shall collaborate with community partners.
The municipalities and the continuums care, period. Oh, wait, local housing coalitions.
Yeah.
Just
They
go on
coordinated
from there, yeah.
entry.
No, coordinated entry is not a partner. That's a thing.
Continuum of
Um,
care.
But you
So
have the
the-
coalitions.
The continuum of care, the balance of state and local housing coalitions, period. It shall build upon the work of the community or not build on. It will utilize but not duplicate the work of the community partners, including the use of coordinated entry or something like that.
Yeah, it seems to me like the tools are coordinated entry and 211 are kind of the structural, the on the ground tools we're using. As we have it now, coordinated entry feels a little bit like an organization. Where it is now.
Right.
Yeah.
And so separating out
You
the
have coordinated
partners
entry and
and then talking about the
tools, yeah.
Sorry, so the program shall utilize but not duplicate
The work of.
the work of the community partners.
work of community partners, including.
Or maybe the program shall utilize coordinated entry and utilize but not duplicate the work of the community partners. I think it's reads better if you put coordinated entry first.
And I don't know if I mean, some of the community action agencies are.
Yes.
Lead agency, and some of
Yeah.
them provide the same services, so I also don't want to set up language that then. Precludes the community action agencies.
Right.
For serving in those roles, because then.
Well, we're just saying it-
As if they couldn't do those activities.
No.
No.
Well, no, I don't think it does. I mean, it
Okay.
says it can utilize it but not duplicate it, meaning,
If it's already being.
it's already
done.
there.
Doing it, they-
yeah, they just use what they're
continue.
doing.
Okay.
And we're saying the program shall build on, not the community action agent, like the program
Yes.
as a whole.
Itself as a
Yeah.
whole, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we're liking your language about utilize but not duplicate. And we've separated, we've kind of rewritten the whole thing.
That probably was good.
Okay, so to summarize for this part.
You go.
Yeah, I'm really gonna take an attempt at it, unless Katie wants to take an attempt at it.
Sure.
Go for it.
A homeless emergency assistance and responsive transition to housing program is established in the department and shall be operated by the community action agencies to the extent funds exist. Community action agencies shall collaborate with other community partners, including municipalities, the two continuums of care, which I'll write out, and local housing coalitions. The programs shall utilize coordinated entry and utilize but not duplicate the work of the community partners. It shall use 2-in-1 for initial intake.
That's awesome,
Right.
except I don't know if I missed 211 discussion.
No, we haven't.
Oh, yeah.
All right, good. So
Yeah.
up to 211, yeah, sounds great.
Did you want to move that last sentence that she spoke to up to the top?
Which,
The coordinated entry sentence.
No,
No,
Okay, you're happy.
no, I think the way.
Good.
It's good.
All right. I mean, I'm not, I thought that's what I heard. So just checking. All right.
okay, so
211.
now 211, yeah. So, I have had conversations with, the, director of 211, Vermont 211 Vermont, whatever it's called. Again, to try to build on, actually, people don't like that build on, but to try to utilize existing services, without duplicating and to avoid the development of something that we might not need to develop, at a regional level, if we can have a statewide response. And they are open to the idea, and they will provide a email to that effect, Eric, so that you can understand that they're willing to entertain the idea and to work on a transition. Yeah.
May I ask Lily a question?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Who currently funds 211, or how is that funded? Because with this being a GA program, would they be funded? Well, more or less to start with, how's the funding look for that? And would more funds need to be allocated to
Yes.
211, but where would those funds come from?
From the administrative funds that are currently housed in the department.
So they wouldn't come from HOP or?
No, they would not come from HOP or the GA current level of funding. There is an anticipated level of reduction in administrative funds at the department, which they are in the process of identifying. So yes, we can't expect them to go to 24/7 doing this added service without additional resources. Those additional resources, I am not anticipating would be greater than the existing resources that we have dedicated to that function already.
It is important.
Go ahead.
So 211 received some funding from Vermont Emergency Management. They received some funding from the Department for Children and Families outside of both GA and COG. Some of that is for the referral information. Some of it is for the housing associated costs. So potentially you would even want to move some of that money into this if 211 is being leveraged. So people should be mindful that that contract right now is outside. And then I do think, you know, I think just in terms of the discussion that folks have had along the way about wanting to have a robust intake and assessment process, I do think in some ways 211 economic services, they all run into the same challenges where you're not really able to do that on the phone. Really, again, they're doing a lot of referral assessment. I think most of what we hear from them is overnight. They're, you know, just often telling people, we don't have space for you. You know, they're not necessarily doing the work, I think, of more of the program staff in terms of let's do the coordinated entry assessment, or let's really talk and make sort of a person-centered plan. So I think this feels a little bit getting ahead of some of the programmatic discussions that are then identified later in terms of like, who is doing this work? What does make sense? I definitely
Maybe we
appreciate
move
that.
this to the consideration. Maybe we move
That's
this.
what's gonna be my
Use
question.
referral,
Well,
initial.
it's-
No.
And it just seems like this, like, I just worry that this will set us up, like, we must use C211 for initial intake.
Well, that's, yeah.
Services, because like,
To
you know,
consider
we
it.
use a phrase like, there's no wrong door.
That's
So I
exactly what I had.
This is like,
Always? Only?
yeah, yes.
Show up at a CAP? If you show up at a winter emergency shelter, because this is
Yeah,
applied
yeah.
to
Yeah, yeah.
Dehart. So
All right.
yeah, that's
So-
good.
I've just moved this to implementation plan, so consideration to be given to broader use of 211 for initial intake. For one source of initial intake or whatever, something like that.
So then my second piece, which would fit well maybe with that, if it further went on and said, consideration and, you know, how a warm referral would occur. You've used the term a warm
Yes,
referral.
yes. I have.
That's not defined.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to be clear, because to me, what that means, but a warm referral is you don't hang up on the person and give them the phone number. You're transferring the call directly so that they're directly connected. But, you know, that may sort of just be insider lingo for what a warm referral.
Well, I think at this point in time, we're going to move it to an implementation plan and
Yes.
use of consideration for the service.
And I just to add, and how the service would function type language so that it's capturing, you know, whatever is used for initial intake, will it always ensure some kind of a, you know, warm handoff?
Yeah.
Because in fact,
It won't always,
No.
because there will be after hours and, you know, holidays and weekends where some people
so there won't be a phone number you could transfer to.
probably not.
Right.
Like there isn't now.
Okay, but as part of the
Yeah.
as part of the planning, that's fine to
Yeah.
just,
Okay, so
Know
now
more
to
about it.
summarize, we have what Katie read to us previously. And then we're going to take that last sentence that talks about, and it won't say it shall use 211 for intake services, but we'll say it will, we're going to move this to the implementation planning phase to consider expanded use of 211 for initial intake services and however transfer to, or I don't know how to word that one.
and just, and the
transfer thing.
functioning of.
And the function, yeah,
Functioning of,
within the,
initial,
within the intake system, or
right.
how it would function within the intake system.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now, it then says, it shall include the following components.
Are you done that section?
I am done that section. Mhm.
Words 1 to 8.
I know, but can we hear it again? Because it was all choppy.
The Vermont Homeless Emergency Assistance and Responsive Transition to Housing Program is established in the department and shall be operated by the community action agencies to the extent funds exist. Community action agencies shall collaborate with other community partners, including municipalities, the Chittenden County Continuum of Care, Balance of State Continuum of Care, and local housing coalitions. The program shall utilize coordinated entry and shall utilize but not duplicate the work of the community partners. Shall include the following components.
So no 211 in there at all?
No, that's moving the implementation plan.
Got it. That's where I got confused. Thank you.
Okay, so check on the top part. Now we're moving to, it shall include the following components. And just doing a time check for people, we will be meeting until, how long do we have you, Katie? I guess that's the first question.
I have to be out of the building by 5:10.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's all right. We'll be meeting till.
To amend my answer.
Yeah, amend.
We will be meeting until approximately 4:15.
I was just kidding.
No, I want people around the room to know and people so they can,
Oh, okay.
4:15, I have another meeting at
Oh,
4:30 and
I didn't want you to think I couldn't stay. Yeah.
yeah, no,
No,
it's all good.
okay.
All right. Okay. So supportive services to assist households experiencing homelessness or those that are at risk of homelessness.
So you're reading, starting with line 9?
I'm starting with line 9. Yes, we just changed homeless. We got rid of precariously housed and say at risk. Be consistent. And it's 2205, so I'll let you deal with it. Yeah, it's still supportive services. Okay. Extreme weather event shelters, again, or caused to be operated by community. Caused to be operated. Okay. Emergency temporary shelters, operated or caused to be operated. And then transitional shelters.
So I know when we're going to delve into each of these.
Yeah.
Momentarily.
We might change the names of them.
In
I
those
know.
sections. Well, no, I just want to,
Yeah.
point out
Yeah.
that each of these, by saying they're operated, caused to be operated by the Community Action Agency. Again, that's placing all the responsibility, under the community action agencies, even though we say they shall collaborate and so forth. Ultimately, the operation of everything is going there. And I think that's what we do want because of creating consistency and statewide coverage and all that, but I am just for clarification on the record, I think we are clearly doing that, and that's creating a concern for folks.
And the cost to be operated is another way of saying,
But that's
by
through
other
them.
people. Well, that's because
But
that's
they
where
have to-
that's where the money's going.
No, that's what
why.
I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I understand. It can be operated by other folks, but only because the caps cause them to be operated.
Okay, and then the line 18 through 21 is new language. Okay, so this is separating out supportive services and shelters. In just a second, we have language from the DV folks. Do you have it open? I don't have it open right here. I gotta
Just.
They say,
Oh, yes, I've got a lot of emails.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
Any of those ones yet either, but
They'll
I saw them flooding.
they'll say the same thing. Okay, wait, I'm sorry, I like somehow lost it somehow.
Yeah, I was just wondering if maybe.
Yes, that would be fine. I just was looking for the specific language because you did thankfully provide
Yes.
specific language. Who's the email from? Is it from you, Sarah? Okay.
For the record, Sarah Robinson. Into domestic and sexual violence. So I did send some specific language. We had actually proposed creating a new section between 2204 and 2205, enumerating the establishment of this statewide domestic and sexual violence shelter program. Because the way the drafting is right now, it appears that that program is essentially underneath the community action programs. And that is our primary concern around conflict with federal law.
So I had forwarded this specific language to people in their emails. Are you seeing their specific language in your email?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was the email from Teresa at?
Did you find it? I sent it to you.
202.
Yeah, from Teresa.
I got it. This one.
Anybody needs it again? I've got it.
So we had some discussion yesterday when we agree, or today's Tuesday, must have been
Yeah,
Friday.
Friday.
Yeah. I worked
We
yesterday.
weren't here
Um,
yesterday.
Had some discussion about separating that out. So I think we've all agreed on the separation of it. So but at that same time, we still, at that discussion level, we had still wanted to be considered as a program component of VHAR, not operated by the community action agencies, but operated by a statewide domestic violence organization. And so the feedback that we're getting is that it looks like it's operated by the community action agencies in the way it's structured here.
I wonder if we, I take the point, especially because the lead in language is all about the community action agencies operating VHART. I wonder if we make the, existing section, subsection A, and add a subsection B. So it is still sort of pulled in as part of VHART, but the language about community action agencies don't apply to it. So then the totality of the program, that we're calling VHART, is in one section, and then we still have that separate standalone section on the domestic violence shelter and supportive services like it's currently drafted.
Okay, so I don't know all of the drafting that's needed. And we all agree about what it is. Katie, I'm gonna say that can we delegate this to you to figure out how to make it appear in the bill?
I'll do my best.
And I'm sure Sarah would be
Wait,
happy to work with
Can
you.
I clarify?
Yes.
Happy to work, and just want to say, we completely agree with how you are articulating it. We understand that it would be under the auspices of the larger program, but that it needs to be set aside specifically within.
Right, so that's why I don't agree with your first language change.
One part of this memo that I'm confused about is that it seems to strike 2209, which is the standalone section on services for households impacted by domestic and sexual violence. So would there not be a standalone section anymore? Or are you replacing that language?
Let's replace it.
Yeah, I have a question mark about how that was.
Where, is there language here that you're proposing to replace it with?
So we had proposed to create a new section, the second paragraph between 2204 and 2205.
Okay.
But if there's a better place within the draft.
Keep it at 2209, but this language is meant to replace 2209. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I see.
So if people are looking at the feedback. The first request is not consistent with our desires to still keep it under the auspices of VHAR. I don't think we'd be doing that. The second one speaks to the placement of it. And what it's composed of, which is, I don't know, is that what you had feedback on, Ian?
No, I'm just trying to find the language that you're looking at. I know it's in,
Yeah,
well, it's, I
No, it's in
printed all
all-
those out.
yeah, that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any disagreement about what it contains, who it's operated by. I think the one question is, are the resources appropriated directly from the department to that program? Or are the resources a component of VHAR and then go there? That's an open thing for me. I don't care
Because
either
that
way.
comes later in the bill and that, I had that as a big highlight,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, I think,
how's the money flow?
yeah,
I think it would still be under VHAR, but I think it's like you have the 5 regional and then the 6
DB.
Yeah,
So
sort
you're
of like a
just doing-
special SSA.
Right, and so you're
versus
doing-
VA.
Exactly.
It's in the
Under the
program, but
same-
it's not under.
No, see those
Program.
things, they work for examples for everything.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
then, right, just your allocation formula
Yeah.
accounts for.
Accounts for that.
regions plus the, yeah, okay.
You understand?
Yep, so this is what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to, as I said before, I'm gonna make this existing, everything we have so far, A, subsection A. And I'm gonna get rid of subdivision 5, and I'm gonna make a new subsection B that says part of the VHAR program is what is now subdivision 5. And then in 2209, which is the existing section, we're gonna strike out what I have and put this language, although I really don't, I'm concerned about the phrase motel pool. Like, that doesn't,
It's how they refer to it, but
what is that?
I'm not sure we actually need to, to be composed of, I think we can just say various forms of shelter. I mean, it's not,
Yeah. Great.
it's not good.
Various
Forms
forms
of
of,
shelter.
okay. Did you print that? I'm gonna run out and grab it.
It's gonna try to.
But then the other piece that has to be clarified is also the section on funding. See page 12, I told myself. Yeah, 2211. There isn't anything here establishing the funding flow, if it's coming from the
Right,
department.
we would.
We need a
add that.
section, yeah, okay.
So, and so under 3A is where it would go. But we'll get there one in, so just hold on to that thought. Yeah, I had thought about that too. Okay,
Yeah, so when we get to that spot, we can deal with it.
Yep.
I've got the reminder. There's nothing, it's not a problem. That's my teenager.
yeah. Okay, so to summarize, it's still a component of overall of VHAR. It is, with an allocation method, decided upon between the, however we refer to the statewide organization. However we refer to that, the statewide organization. With population-specific service experience. So when we get to page 12, Katie, we're gonna have to amend the resource allocation thing.
Okay,
Okay, so the money would flow directly from the department. It would be like, a separate section. And we'll see new language tomorrow. And feel free to share that with
sorry, I don't, so page 12.
when we talk about, we'll get to it when we talk about
Okay, so you
resources.
won't see new language overnight on that.
No, no. I'm just,
Tomorrow problem.
okay, so we know what we're doing, there. So you're taking out paragraph 5 and you're restructuring that and, we got it. Okay, supportive services, we're on page, so we are checking off page 6.
In terms of discussion, not final language, we don't have, yeah.
While we're waiting for language.
Yes, we know what the concept is, we don't know what the
Read on
language
the
is.
concept, yep.
Okay, supportive services.
First 2 words. I'm wondering if consistent with what we've done elsewhere, instead of saying consistent with coordinated entry procedures, like community action, it should say within the existing coordinated entry procedures.
Yeah, she won't say existing. Trust me, I've had that word many times.
Okay, within, right.
Top of page 7. Can't say current, can't say
I got it.
existing.
Top of page 7, instead of consistent with, I want within the coordinated entry procedures. That's what I'm suggesting. Don't put it in yet. I don't know if everybody.
Well, I actually had a question about whether this is an appropriate lead-in phrase for this. So I need people in the room who are more experts than I am to know whether this is an appropriate lead-in. Because I'm not sure. That's just my.
Mhm.
I mean, not all of these things are provided via coordinated entry.
Right.
That's why I'm.
Right.
Coordinated entry is more the tracker and like the connecting, and there's ways you can enter the services, but it's not like mandated through coordinated entry. So I don't, I can,
Yeah.
I'll,
I don't think it's an appropriate lead-in now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if you would take,
Go ahead, Brenda.
Brenda Siegel, I don't know. I was just gonna say that and frequently the services cause the coordinated entry. So, somebody gets into the services first and then is able to get through the coordinated entry process.
Mhm.
So, if there's some way to like flip that a little bit,
Yeah,
that would be good.
and Lily?
thanks. I think that I agree that if you could remove it here, and then I do wonder if you want to put something in either the community action agency responsibilities or the department responsibilities, just sort of say, you know, we ensure this operates in conjunction with coordinated entry or something like that, you know, so that again, whatever. And again, maybe that's a just department or community action or agency responsibility, but. yeah.
You know, honestly, I'm feeling like in the rewording on the previous page that we've already say that we're going to utilize coordinated entry. So I'm feeling like we don't need to say it again.
Oh, yeah, because I was going to suggest the wording, community action agency shall offer utilizing the coordinator, and we've got it. So, yeah.
We've already said it.
So that covers it.
So to summarize, we're getting rid of consistent with coordinated entry procedures. We're just going to start C, community action agency. And then precariously housed should be changed to at risk of homelessness. And are we really meaning unsheltered
I was just gonna
homelessness?
ask about that. I
want to make sure we're using the right term. So it's
homelessness.
experiencing homelessness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, because that's the whole concept of manner and extent depends on, yeah. Well, unless the concept was, when we're talking about there's going to be a different manner and extent, you might.
Well, there's homelessness and then there's unsheltered as a subcomponent of that. So I think that it is accurate.
Yeah,
to get
right,
rid of
the level,
unsheltered.
okay,
Yeah.
sure, yeah, okay.
Okay, so to summarize, that first paragraph would now read, a community action agency shall offer or cause to be offered the following supportive services, which may vary in terms of manner and extent depending on the level of shelter a household utilizes or whether the household is at risk of homelessness or experiencing homelessness. And then there's the list. So is the lead in okay? Yes.
I'm wondering if it feels necessary to write again, in collaboration with existing service providers here, or is this? That's a good point.
I think it doesn't hurt to say that again.
I'd like
Shall
to.
offer or cause to be offered and right in there,
Yeah. In collaborate, yeah.
collaboration with.
Say that again, let's say.
It will say a community action agency shall offer a cause to be offered. Oh, no, a community action agency shall, in collaboration with other community partners, offer a cause to be offered the following.
I like that.
I'm not sure where it's, when you read the sentence back, it might go in a different place, but that's the concept. Okay, so we're okay with the lead in. All right, now we're talking about the list of services. Yeah, go ahead.
If, moving a list of services, the first three, underneath the first three, you should put in some type of language. That should be required. Then the other ones below, those are more voluntary because they line up with referral. Anybody entering into the thing, I mean, they should be required to, put together a client-centered, individualized housing plan. Also put together the assessment as well as do the intake assessment. We can remove diversion services, but my point being is I believe these first three should be some level of a requirement.
So I have another place to try to address that whole issue
Okay.
and see where, I don't know where the committee comes out on it, but I kind of envision a spot to raise all of that and as part of that, you know, the things that need to be worked out in the implementation plan, but that kind of,
And to piggyback on that,
I can say it now, but you know, I don't.
Eric, I wonder if the term shall is like strong enough for you here as legislative aid. Like shall is a mandate, like
Yeah.
that's a strong word.
Oh, I don't think he's saying that he's not putting the burden on that. He's saying what the individual, what the households have to do.
Okay, I see.
Shall participate.
Yeah, because if we move all the way down to the bottom of the number 10, participation in services provided under this section shall be voluntary. What I'm requesting is that those first 3 points, there should be a.
Be mandatory, you're saying. Yeah.
I don't want to use the word mandatory, require,
Okay.
whatever,
Same.
mandatory.
So can let me throw out the language I was, and this would have been as part of the what they've got to come back with in plans, and it actually had 2 parts, but roughly, whether continuation in emergency or transitional shelters include expectations regarding household participation, and if so, in what elements and what circumstances they should be applied. So it would be expectations in terms of continuing your shelter. But it's about, you know, should there be those expectations? And if so, you know, what would be the elements that might be included and in what circumstances? And then the second piece to that, which we really haven't discussed hardly at all, but is part of the existing system, is, you know, whether financial participation should be an expectation, and if so, you know, because we talk a lot about, well, should that be can that be a savings account or whatever? But the longstanding premise was a third of the income.
Just let us know where you're.
She's
Oh,
talking
is
about.
that in the like input?
That would be in the implementation plan to come back with
them to
whether
consider.
In
this.
that committee, yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's what.
Right, rather than
As well.
putting it in here, and then I did have a tie, if the participation is voluntary, which maybe that should stay out until that comes back. But what I would have added there, right on line 18, would be participation in services provided under the section shall be voluntary, but may be a component of expectations for receiving continued shelter.
I wonder if that sets us up, though, for getting fairly far down the line when we get back to that. And if there is nothing in there along the lines of what Eric is suggesting, we're a year into the process.
So this is the reason that I put in the participation is, one, we can't really force anybody to do anything. what really Eric is talking about, a condition of receiving
it's a
services.
Or continuing.
Or
once you-
continuing
once
once
you-
you're in,
yeah.
yeah.
Continuing shelter, really.
And there is precedent in human services for this type of thing. So usually in a Medicaid program, to be more specific. So in home and community-based services, for instance, because we've made an agreement with the federal government, people have to have a service plan. They don't really have an option of whether they have a service plan. If they're receiving residential services, meaning 24/7, they have to have an annual physical. They can't decline an annual physical unless there's some medical reason.
They can be cut off. We passed the thing on, you can be cut off if the agency says you're
So-
violent or you're obnoxious or not obnoxious.
Yeah. So however, that is not consistent with Housing First
No.
principles.
But housing first apply to long term. And that's the thing is how do you apply housing first? This is exactly that
Mhm.
we haven't really resolved. Housing first principles, which all focus on, because you do have expectations, you have to pay your rent. You're not getting services you don't want, but there are expectations because if you don't pay your rent, your landlord will evict you. So it is a different scenario. And one of the pieces of input, I think, spoke well to why it didn't necessarily mesh, which means we have to spell out a little bit more by what we mean with being consistent with the model, which is better language, but in this kind of circumstance. And I think we need that to come back to us. I don't think we can resolve it, but if we put in statute shall be voluntary
I know.
without tying it, I think maybe we just have to
Sorry, I
leave
have to
that
delete
line
that for
out.
right now.
Yeah, I think we have to leave that out and make it something that comes back to us.
I like the approach that you're talking about and some of the language that you said because
It doesn't
And
assume a specific.
it doesn't
outcome of
assume a
that
specific, but it says, what part of these elements do people need to participate in essentially? And we did have in last year's version of the bill that you had to agree to be in coordinated entry unless there was a disability, language.
And
that-
you had to be doing a housing search
Yes,
and and there had to be the financial contribution.
yeah. So there were required elements. I was struggling and I guess it's the same struggle that you're talking about, Anne, is how that fits, which it doesn't necessarily with Housing First.
It doesn't, but
So-
it's not the same. And that's.
It's not the
problem.
same, I
It-
know.
It doesn't to the extent that there's a difference in the type of program.
Yeah,
And that's why it has to be balanced out carefully in terms of, and I don't call them, I call them expectations, but it still would end up,
okay, so.
affecting continuation in emergency shelter.
So for where we are right now, we're gonna delete B. And I think we'll take up your concept, Eric, under the planning phase. And with some language that I think Ann that maybe you and Ann could work on together.
Yeah, I'd like that. Just quickly, an individualized service plan is not a service. It's a plan that guides the service.
It is, but you have to agree to
You have to
participate.
agree, it can't be just done for you.
No. If it's developed correctly, it's client centered. They're the ones driving the plan. Without a plan, then what's the commitment or
Well,
anything
that's
to
the
like
discussion.
I don't disagree.
find the
Yeah,
next?
that's exactly the
next step.
discussion.
Yeah,
But then that means the service, receiving the service, isn't wholly voluntary because you do have to be willing to engage in the plan. And that's the, we can't really say it's all voluntary.
okay, so what I'm gonna
Just want to
propose.
also, like, we're using words like willing and things like that. Also remember Able.
Able.
some folks
That-
are not able.
That's why I want to know what
Participate in this process.
Yeah,
what circumstances they should be applied was exactly thinking about that.
I'll just say quickly that, this is a great conversation. I totally hear what you're saying. I think it's right. But in this section, we're describing what the community action agencies are doing, not what people's responses to them need to be. We're simply saying these are the services they're providing. So if we just have a list of services, is that not adequate for at least what the community action agency?
Exactly where we just gonna go.
Yeah. And so then over in an implementation section, we talk about how that actually.
Yes, yes, exactly. We strike B for now, we strike it here because we're gonna.
And intake and assessments and diversion from homelessness. You got that?
Oh, yes, right.
So are we changing the title then to, from the generic supportive services, if using B, should this be community action agency supportive services?
No,
It's defining what the supportive service.
this is a component of BHAR. One component. Supportive services. Okay, that seems like a good place to stop. It's 4:15. Okay, so just so everybody knows our goal, we will be here tomorrow until we finish.
Okay,
Okay?
okay.
Everybody know that.
Is that voluntary?
That was gonna be
Because we have a lot.
Yeah. I'm just gonna, are people able to attend? All right, excuse me, Brenda, the Brendas. Are people able to start at, earlier tomorrow instead of 9 o'clock? Are you able to start at 8 o'clock?
I miss my choir.
There's a call.
8:30?
I have a meeting tonight.
8:30 would be nice, so I could sing a little.
8:30, there's a caucus that a few of us belong to, that meets tomorrow morning at 8, so 8:30 would allow us to attend.
Okay, all right, let's try to get, if you're not able to be here, we can at least.
I can do it.
Okay,
8:30 is great.
8:30?
yeah,
I could do the.
all right, 8:30 tomorrow. Okay,